Hello class. We're going to look at creating a responsive design. A responsive design is one that changes based on your screen resolution. So to give you an example of what we're talking about here, I'll take this design here, and as we close in here we'll see a first change there. We'll assume that that these are ads on the right hand side, and then the meat of your content goes here in the body, and then your links on the left hand side. So the ads are going to be the first thing to disappear. We try to keep them on the screen as long as we can, but then they're gone. And from this point on, when you approach the edge of the content, it moves into a smaller size. And we approach the edge again and it moves into a smaller size, and once again it moves into our smallest size for this. And so all we're doing here is changing the CSS to display this content differently. For this exercise, I've chosen a very simple design with elements that are easy to keep track of. We've got a top banner up here in one color, and then we've got 3 columns. So that allows us to easily keep track of it. So this is a very simple responsive design. The idea being that once you've done this one, we could very easily go into more complex designs that are going to require quite a bit more CSS than this one will. Why would you want to create a responsive design? Well, the idea is that each one of these levels adapts to a different screen. So one of these might be for a tablet size, and one of these might be for a phone size, and otherwise these larger ones might just be for different resolutions on one's given computer. So to start out, I have a folder that has some initial stuff in it, a folder that's got a Purdue signature logo that we'll use, this other ad banner that we'll just duplicate down the side for the sake of brevity, and then I've got a JS folder that's got some JavaScript files in it. The one we're going to use in here is going to be the jQuery file, and we're going to place our HTML file in there as well. So let's go ahead and go over to Dreamweaver, and we'll take a quick look at this. We've got quite a bit of CSS up at the top, and then we've got our HTML as it's laid out down here towards the bottom. Let's start from scratch and do this once again. So we'll do a new HTML, we'll choose HTML5, hit create. We're going to start by including our JavaScript file. In this exercise, I will use jQuery to place the content into our divs. So inside of our head tag, we'll do a script, type equals text/JavaScript, close script, and this one's going to point out to source equals js/jQuery dot dash 1.7.1 dot JS. Now you can probably use I'm sure you can use a newer version of JavaScript than this. There's actually a newer one out right now. Everything should be compatible. This is the one I happen to have handy, so this is the one I'm using. In addition to that, we're going to have quite a few styles, so I'll go ahead and lay out my style, type equals text/CSS, and my close style tag. And then I will move down here into the body, and I'm going to lay out our main divs that we're going to use. So we're going to have 4. We'll have a div with ID equal to top. We'll close that. A div with ID equal to left. A div with ID equal to middle, and one more equal to right. Now that we have those in place, there's not really anything to see on the screen yet, so let's go ahead and add some CSS for each one of those. So we need one for top, for left, one for middle, and one for right. And I'll go ahead and line up those as we begin. So all four of these are going to be absolutely positioned. So I'll start with that on each one of them. This one is going to start at the top 0, 0. And then I will copy this to the others and we'll alter those as necessary. So the absolute will stay the same. For the left, we want the top to start, well, it'll actually start 200 pixels down. We haven't set the width and height of the top yet, but we'll come back to that. And actually all of these will have a top of 200 pixels down. And then the left is going to change for each one of them. So for the first one it's going to be 0 pixels, and then for the second one we'll have a left of 250 pixels, and then the last one will be 1050. Now the top, we're going to set the width of it to be 1450 pixels and the height to be 200 pixels. And that's where your top of 200 pixels comes from on the other three. And we're going to give it a background color so that we can easily see where it begins and ends and how it changes just for this exercise. So for this one, I'm going to make that one a black background color. For the left, we're going to give it a width of 220 pixels. A height we'll specify for now as 200% so that it scrolls on down past the bottom of the page for us. And we're going to give it a different background color. Again, all we're looking to do is to be able to easily distinguish between these four elements on the page as they resize. So the background color I have for this one is light gray here. The middle will be larger in width. We'll set it equal to 770 pixels. We'll keep the height the same, consistent on these at 200%. And again, we're going to set a background color on this one. We'll set that equal to just off of white so that it's not too terribly gaudy. And on the right, we'll set the width on this one to be 370 pixels. The height again is going to stay consistent here at 200%. And then we'll set the background color of this one to be B1946C, Old Gold. Now the last thing we want on the left, middle, and right is some padding. So we'll do padding of 15 pixels on all three of those. And that's just so that the text doesn't go right up against the edge of the div. There's a little space there. That's all. So I'll do a Control S to save this, and I have a folder out here that I've created that has my JS folder inside of it, and I'm just going to call this index.html, plain HTML file. Save that, and let's go ahead and drag and drop it into Chrome. To get a sense of what we're looking at. And I see right away that I mistyped one of my dimensions there, so let's come back to Dreamweaver, and my width on my left should be 220. We'll save that and come back to Chrome and refresh that, and now we've got those lining up the way that we want. Let's go ahead and put a couple of things in here now. So after my 4 divs, I'm not actually going to place anything inside of these 4 divs. They're just going to sit there like that, and I'll use jQuery to populate them. Down below, I'm going to create another div with an ID of banner. And inside of this one, I'm going to put an image. The source is going to go to the image that I have there for the Purdue identity, which happens to be pu_signature_gold.gif. I'll set the alternate text and the title just equal to something, because we should for accessibility. And I'll set the width but not the height. I'll set the width to 200 and make sure that that's a self-closing tag. Underneath that, I'll do an H1, and inside of that H1 I'll put responsive design. I'll save that, Alt-Tab to flip, and F5 to refresh, and just like that it shows up, right? Of course not. So what we've done is put a div on the page, but it's currently covered by what we have available. So we've got to use jQuery to push that in. So let's do a script. Type equals text/JavaScript. Close script. Just inside of this opening one, we want an HTML comment. And then just inside the closing one, we want a closing HTML comment. Now inside of here, we'll put our jQuery document ready function, which is going to force it to wait until the document is ready before it does any of the jQuery. So there it populates the rest of that document ready function for me. And then once I've done that, I'm going to take the I'm going to do top .html, and inside of that HTML I'm going to pass it the banner. And I will save that and come back and look, and now once again I've got my my image there where I want it to be. Now we need some styling for the H1 here. So for the H1, move that over. The H1, we're going to change the color, and let's do gray. We're going to change the font size, and let's make that 50 pixels. And let's text align it to the center. Save that, come back and refresh, and now we've got our title up there centered, and we've got our Purdue University logo in the upper left-hand corner. Next, let's go ahead and put our ad banner down the right-hand side here. Give us a little something to work with. We'll approach this the same way as we did the other piece. We'll create a div here. Give that div an ID, this time of ads. Close that. Inside of here, we'll just put some more images. So I'll come up here and I'll copy this image tag and I'll paste it here, but we're going to change this source attribute to this, and I'll change the alt and title to just be add, and let's give that a width of 350. Now I'm going to put a couple of breaks in between there, and I'm just going to repeat it down the page a little bit. And then I'm going to do the same thing that I did here in order to push that into the right div. So I will choose right.html. Inside of that, we'll grab the ads div. And that will push that into the right div. So I'll save that and I'll flip back and refresh, and we've got that repeating down the side now. So next, let's move over into this area here, and we're just going to create some links that can go there. We're not actually going to use them. It's going to be kind of like everything else. We're just putting together a page that has simple elements, but I want you to know what every single element is on the page so that when we create the responsive design, you're not wondering what a particular element is. So, which could happen if we started with a pre-existing design. So let's come back to the code, and we're going to create another div here, and in this one we're going to give it an ID of nav, and inside of here we're going to put some H3s, and I'm just going to put some things in here. Actually, first I'm going to copy that. And we'll just put some words in here. So let's do coding, CSS3, HTML5, PHP, let's do JavaScript, jQuery, and let's say SQL. So that'll give us some elements there. And right now let's go ahead and just push that, similar to how we did the others, into the left. And we're going to take the nav and push it in there. And so that'll end our jQuery statement there. Let's save that. Flip back, refresh, and you'll see those appear here. Let's start out with some sub-navigation though. And again, it's going to be kind of fake sub-navigation for our purposes. So I'm going to do an unordered list, and inside of there have 5 list items, and I'll just alternate to get some different length here on the links. I know I put link 1 on all of them, but that's really not the part we should be focusing on. So I'm going to copy this and put it under each one of these H3s. Again, just so we have something to work with. And let's save that, flip back and refresh, and now we can see that we've got our links going down the left hand side there. So let's come back to CSS. We've put in an H3, some H3s, ULs, and LIs. So we're going to address all of those up here in the styles. So we'll put down H3, UL, LI. For the H3, we're going to change the color on it. Change the color to black. We're going to change the font size to 20 pixels. And let's just change the font family to, let's do Tahoma. For the UL, we're going to change the list style to none. And for the LI, we're going to add the text decoration for an underline. We're going to change the color to an off blue, change the font size to 18 pixels, and on mouse over we'll change the cursor to a pointer. So let's save that and flip back, and now we've got this effect for us. So they're not actually links, they're just something that we can work with as we move forward. Now in the center area, all I want to do is grab some lorem ipsum text and fill that in so that we've got something to actually see there. For that, I'm going to go to a lorem ipsum generator. You can Google for this. Just go to Google, type in lorem ipsum, and this will be your first link. And for this, I'm going to grab 7 paragraphs, hit generate, and then I'm just going to copy this text right here down to here. Hit copy, and I'm going to come back to Dreamweaver, and down here at the bottom out of the way is where I'm going to put this. And I'll go ahead and paste it in like that, which doesn't look very good currently, but we're going to wrap that in some jQuery statements so that it populates it into that middle field. So what we're going to do is just take each of these, and I actually pasted it into the wrong spot because I just said I wanted to use jQuery. Inside of our jQuery here is where I want to paste it. And then in front of each one of these, we will use append. And so each one of these will start like this. And mine's going to be have errors here for a few seconds. So I'll start with append in front of each one of these. And then each one of them needs to end with a couple of breaks, a double quote, a parenthesis, and a semicolon. So then I'm going to copy that, and I'm going to put that at the end of each one of these lines. And I'll have to come back and change that one I started on. Let's change this one just because of the way that it works here. Still didn't change it quite enough. Let's come back here a few lines. And then let's copy this once again, the append, and put that in the front. Sorry. And then we need one last on the end here, and that should get rid of our formatting problems. And so we can bunch this together if we want. All that just to get some lorem ipsum text there in the in that middle part. And we can go ahead and close this out, come back to here and hit refresh, and there our lorem ipsum text is appearing. We've got our padding working for us so it's not up against that edge. And now we are ready to address the responsive design aspects. Now that you've built this entire thing, so you can see how the elements are going to change. What we're going to do for the responsive design is add CSS so that as we hit certain intervals in the width, our CSS is going to change. The way that we do that is with @media statements. So you'll notice everything changes red as soon as you type media. We'll do @media screen and we'll put max-width colon 1200 pixels. We open that up and then close it with a curly bracket. And so the way that I structured this is that we would adjust the CSS at 1200 pixels, 1000, 800, 600, and 400. And that would give us enough repetition in doing this to hopefully show you what's happening in the responsive design and how you need to change things in a more complex design. So I'm going to go ahead and copy this. And then I'll change these values: 1000, 800, 600, and 400. Now inside of this 1200 one, all I want to do is shorten this up a little bit. So let's come back here to the solution. And with the solution, we'll see that we're actually at 1450 pixels wide. And as we start covering up those ads on the right, which we're fine with because they're just ads, our first step is going to be to just reduce that middle part a little bit. But then as we go from 1000 down to 800, we've got to lose the ads and then keep our content there. So our first jump there is going to be just a simple move to take this center part to be a little bit smaller. So inside of our 1200 pixel, we need the top, middle, and right. So I'm going to come up here and I'm just going to grab these and paste them in, and I don't need the left for this particular one. Indent them just a little bit more. And now what I need to do is just change some of the values that are inside of this CSS. So what we're going to look at, the top is going to shrink from 1450 down to 1250. The middle is going to shrink from 770 pixels wide to 570 pixels wide. And because the middle shrank, I've got to move where the right is, and so I'm going to come over here to the left, and we need to move that to 850 pixels. And I'm going to save that and come back to our design, make sure we're on the one that we're currently working with, refresh it, and it moves for us. So that was our first step. The next step is going down to 1000 pixels, and we are going to get rid of the ads on the right hand side. So let's come down here to the 1000 pixels. Again, we need the top, middle, and right for this one. So I'm going to come to the one we just did. I'm going to copy that and I'm going to paste it here. And similar to what we did before, I'm going to look at the width of the top banner that's going across there, and I'm going to change that down to 800 because that's our next jump. The middle, the width, I'm going to change to 520. And then the right, we're going to get rid of all of this CSS and just simply do display none. I'll save that and I'll come back to Chrome and refresh the browser. There's our first jump. There's our second jump. And once we get to 800, we'll see our third jump. And you'll notice that as we go back out, they automatically cascade back the other direction. So starting here, because now we're dealing with real content, we're at 1000 and I pushed it to 800. And so at 800 I'm going to push it to 600, and at 600 push it to 400, and so on. So now we're going to look at the at media statement with 800 pixels. And for this one, we'll have top, left, middle, and right. So I'm going to grab these three and paste them in here again. And I also want the left, so I'm going to copy that and come down here and put it in the correct location so that we can adjust it down there. So on this one, like I said, at 1000 pixels I pushed it down to 800 pixels all the way across. At 800 pixels we're going to push it down to 600 pixels all the way across. Now this one is the left here. On the left I'm going to change the width of it from 220 down to 120. And then on the middle part where our lorem ipsum text is, I'm going to change that down to 420. And I'll go ahead and save that. Come back to Chrome, refresh, and let's see that next jump. Oh, and I missed one thing that we'll have to go back and correct. We forgot to move the left on the middle div, the left attribute of the middle div. So we'll come back here, and the middle div, the left attribute, instead of being 250 pixels, needs to be 150 pixels, because we subtracted 100 off of this one that was next to it. So let's save that. We should be in good shape this time. And there's our jump. And now let's go from 600 down to 400. It's a little repetitive now. We'll do something a little different on the last one. So what I'm going to do is copy these once again. So for starters on this one, we're going to be doing a little bit more. At 600, I want to push it down to 400. And then inside of the left here, we're going to change its width down to 100. In the middle div, we're going to change its width to 240 pixels. And we're going to change its left to 130 pixels. We're going to keep that one the same, and we also at this point want to change the UL, the H1, and the H3. So I'm going to grab these three, come down here and paste them in. And on the H1 I'm going to change the font size down to something a little bit smaller because we're losing screen real estate. On the H3, the same rationale. We're going to change the font size down a little bit. And on the UL, I'm simply just not going to display it anymore. So instead of saying list style none there, I'm going to put display none. And what that's going to do is remove those extra links that are there and just leave the main navigation. So I'll save that, come back and refresh, and now so we move down to 800, 600, 400. So you can see that jump where we had our links on the left hand side, and now they are gone. And now we're going to do one last jump and do something a little bit different than what we've done on all the others. So inside of this 400, once again, we'll have the top, left, middle, right, and I'll paste those in. So the changes that we're going to make here, on the top, our overall width is going to come down to 330. On the left, our width is going to change to 90 to give us a little different look. The middle width on this one, the middle width is going to grow to 300 because we are going to move it down the screen. So the width is going to go to 300, but then we are going to change the top to, instead of being 200 pixels, we're going to push it down to 700 pixels. And we are also going to change the left down to 0 pixels so that it lines up heading down the page. The other major change is going to be with the H3. So with the H3, we're going to add some things in here. Let's add in a width of 300 pixels. Let's add a height of 35 pixels. Text align to center it. And add a background color, and we'll use that old gold once again. So let's go ahead and save those changes and see if I'll drop that down here so that it's still on the screen. Let's go ahead and save those changes and see if we've made any mistakes. Come back here and refresh. Our first jump, second, third, fourth, fifth, and it looks how we want it to. So we've still got our navigation here, and we can jump down to that text down below. And so that's our last step in our responsive design. Again, this is a rather simple responsive design. It's something you'd want to do to be able to accommodate different devices, different screen widths. You don't necessarily always want to do it, though. There are some cons against doing this, but this is how you do it if you want to be able to. So from here, we'd choose something that is more complex. Now that we've looked at some relatively easy to track elements on the page, we could look at a far more complex design and start looking at the responsive design of that. So that ends this demonstration. I hope you found it useful.